So Zac Taylor has a ton of pressure on him. I'm hoping that he can get himself out of it. I would love to come out on this show and say that I'm wrong about Zac Taylor, and Zac Taylor is a good coach. I would love to say that. But until I see it, I'm not going to say it. And I need him. I need him to do it again. I need him to make the playoffs. I need him to have one of those streaks. But to Jacob's point, I don't know if this team is able to do that. This is a different team than it was in 2021 and 2022 and 2023. This is it's a different team. You have Joe Burrow, that's great. Your defense is so bad that it's laughable. Well, I don't know if you can overcome the world's worst defense.
One thing that I do think is important to bring up during the Zac Taylor conversation, and I know it's little bits and pieces, but it's a lot of anti-Zac Taylor. And I think one of the biggest things that you can 100% point to coaching that it affects, because you can argue about play calls and whether or not that's the players on the field or not. The one thing you can 100% point to is the discipline of the team. That comes from the coaches. The Bengals are distantly the least penalized team in football. Distantly.
And that's been a trend throughout the Zac Taylor era.
And the offense is a top 12 to 15 offense.
Yeah.
Top 10 passing offense. Bottom outside the top 20 rushing offense. So you average those out.
They have the quarterback leading the league in passing yards, touchdowns.
That's
receiving.
what I mean. It's like, are we really thinking that the offensive play caller and head coach is the problem when it's a disciplined team with an elite offense? I don't think so. I think there's a lot of bigger problems on this
average
team.
defense away. From us not even talking about Zac Taylor.
100%.
I can't believe he ran
average defensive players away.
Yeah. So
what was that sigh, Casey?
Oh yes, did anyone hear that?
There was a sigh from Casey across the room.
He's cold again. He's cold. Did you see
putting that jacket on?
I might put that jacket on.
Jump back in, Casey. Jump in.
I don't know, guys. You're looking at the stats and saying that that's a great offense. Sure. I mean, Joe Burrow's playing hero ball for half the season, and most of those yards came from the Ravens, where, Jamar and him just completely take over a game. I'm not giving any credit to this offense whatsoever.
So Zac Taylor gets blamed when the offense struggles, but when it's great, it's not any of his credit.
Just look at the Ravens game, and you tell me who had the great offensive performance. Was it the coaching, or was it Joe Burrow and Jamar?
Some pretty good play calling in that game. Pretty great play calling in that game.
Most of the touchdowns that he threw were from him scrambling around outside of the structure of the offense.
A 72-yard backside look post to Jamar Chase. Schemed up to be wide open on a bomb.
Like I said,
I think it's one of the best play calling games of Zac Taylor's career.
Most of them were Joe Burrow playing hero ball.
Why did he have to run? Because Zac Taylor asked him to, or because we have one of the worst O-lines in football right now?
Have a better structure then. Have a better offensive game plan for that.
I think that was one of the best play calling games of Zac Taylor's career. I was
thrilled
after Thursday night.
I am not giving him credit because most of the time Joe
Then
Burrow
I don't think
makes
you
him
should
look much
ever
better
give
than
him
he is.
blame, which is fine, but be consistent.
I'm not giving him blame. I'm not going to sit here and act like he is the reason why this offense is ticking. That's not it. It's Joe and Jamar.
And that's fine. But when it struggles, don't ever say it's Zac Taylor's fault. Because if it's great and it's not his credit, then you can't say that.
I haven't.
Not you, everyone.
I haven't.
If you're not going to give Zac Taylor credit when it's great, then I don't know how you can kill him when it's bad. Because that's all people do. When the offense scores 17 points against the Giants, it's Zac Taylor can't scheme up against a bad team. Then you score 40 against the Ravens, and it's all Joe and Jamar. It
is pretty much, in my eyes, it's pretty much all Joe Jamar. The most blame that I have is just the roster construction, but I hate bringing that up every single time we have this debate because it's just tired at this point. Like, we already know we don't have the players on this team to, get us over the hump where we need to be. And T has been out for a significant part of this year, and what does it look like when T's out there? Does it look much better structurally? Maybe. I don't know. Same with Orlando Brown being out for however many weeks it's been now. So I get it. I like to put a lot of focus on the players now at this point because regardless how we feel, I think the coaching staff, at least offensively, probably is in a good spot because of, like you mentioned, they're just going to look at the numbers and say, yeah, this is an efficient offense, when really it's just Joe and Jamar being great. I don't think that's hard to do. I think what separates them being, fantastic, right, is being able to figure out the run game. And they haven't been able to do that. Now, do we have the players to do it? I don't know. Probably not. But my point is, when we talk about this team and how good they are offensively, I think we're really just saying Joe and Jamar are great. And that's not hard to do. They're not top 3 offense in the league. They're a top 10 offense with a bottom of the league running game. So I don't know, man. Like I don't.
I think
feel
being
like
a top
that's-
10 offense with the receiving core we've been working with all year, Chase Brown and Zach Moss in the backfield and the least athletic O-line in football is a resounding success.
Yeah, but that's mainly because of Joe and Jamar being so great. Like I don't know how much.
I choose to give a little bit of credit to the guy who's calling the offensive plays when the offense scores a lot of points. I don't think that's crazy to say.
I don't think it's hard to have an efficient offense when you have Joe and Jamar. That's what I'm getting at.
So, take Andy Reid out of the equation. I think like people nitpick on some things they don't like about Zac Taylor's play calling, but like Green Bay does that with LaFleur. I think a lot of, obviously Buffalo does that all the time with whoever calls their plays. I mean, that's one reason they chase Dorsey out. Now, to be fair, since Dorsey's left, Josh Allen all of a sudden knows how to not turn the football over. So
yeah.
there's something there. But there's been a lot of good offenses that I think nationally we don't hear people complain about the play. I think sometimes complaining about play calling is more regionalized. Like it's more localized to your team's fan base. We come in here, man, Green Bay looked good. We're not stripping it down to, oh, man, that play call that LaFleur had, I mean, that was horrible. I think we do that as fans more with our team. We nitpick our team more than anyone else. Let me ask you, I've never heard Zac Taylor's name be mentioned on national shows criticizing him for the Bengals' struggles throughout the season, outside of saying the Bengals' head coaching job could be open if they lose with Joe Burrow. But they're not stripping it down and narrowing it down to Zac Taylor's ability to coach. So that's why, Mike, I think sometimes we get pigeonholed into this. We do that fan speak where we nitpick our team way more than anybody else. I don't think anyone outside of Cincinnati is truly concerned about Zac Taylor's ability to run this team. And not a shot at you. I just think it's very fanboyish to just give Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase all the credit, because I don't think that they could do what they do if they weren't put in a position to be able to do that. Mike McCarthy, is another one. Mike McCarthy reminds me of Zac Taylor a bit, where when the Dallas Cowboys have had the top 3 offense in the league the last 3 years, not this year. Mike McCarthy's on the hot seat every year. Everyone wants him out, right? Like Mike McCarthy's the only other coach I could think of that a team has success and everyone says, but it's not because of him. That's the only coach I could think of that's been kind of put in that spot.
Well, what you're doing is positioning Taylor as putting Joe in a position for success. I'm saying the opposite. Joe is putting Taylor in a position of success with his play and his performance on the field. Zac Taylor calls a play, and Joe Burrow makes it happen. Right?
Joe Burrow makes the play that Zac Taylor called happen? Correct.
But I'm saying based off of his great performance, based off of his play, it makes Zac Taylor look like a genius. Okay? That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that Zac Taylor is horrible by any stretch of imagination. I'm just saying that we're giving him a lot of praise when I don't think he deserves a lot of praise. I don't think he deserves a lot of. It's basically
every play caller.
It's a David Bell conversation. I don't think it really matters a whole lot when you have Joe Burrow out there.
So every play caller in offenses that have great talent doesn't matter. So why do we want Ben Johnson in Cincinnati? Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Sam Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Why does his play calls matter?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't think that.
I think coaching in football matters vastly more.
Drastically.
I think if you look at the I was going to say San Diego Chargers. If you look at the Los Angeles Chargers this year, they have 5 more wins this season than they did last season at this very point. They've lost players.
I don't think it matters.
They've lost players, like key players, and they're 5 wins better than they were last year. I think Jim Harbaugh. I think he's one of the best coaches in the league. That matters.
Yeah, but that's not specifically play calling. That's scheme. That's deciding to go in a whole different direction with your team. Like they decided to become a more running based offense, which.
But what did they do to become that? They brought in Greg Roman to call the offensive plays. And he calls a more physical offense that fits what they want to do. Play calling matters.
Yeah, but I'm just saying based off of Zac Taylor's offense, and I think you would agree with this, that a lot of the onus of how well the team does is based off of how the star players perform.
But I think that's when they're not out there. Any team in football.
Well, then you agree with me in some bit of fashion then, because the
Lions
offense is not the same offense without Jahmyr Gibbs, without David Montgomery, without Amon-Ra St. Brown.
I'm arguing that pulling the play caller makes just as big of a difference as pulling a lower tier star player. You pull Ben Johnson from that lineup or you pull David Montgomery from that lineup, I think it affects the Lions offense in a very similar way.
And I would say it doesn't affect the Bengals offense in a significant way.
But my question is, if you want to fire Zac Taylor because of the play calling,
No,
we then
I
want to
didn't-
go get a play caller from another team.
I didn't say to fire
Not
him.
you. Anyone who's hating on Zac Taylor for the play calling. You want to fire him because the offense is putting up numbers and it's just the star players that's doing it. This is an argument I've heard from a ton of people. But you want to go out and get every name on the list of people we want to get is just an offensive coordinator at another elite offense with elite talent. Like, no one's asking for the Vrabels or the Belichicks to come in here because I don't think anyone thinks that that's the fix of new modern NFL. You want young, offensive talent.
But maybe you do.
That's
Because-
what I'm saying.
Not mocking you, but like based on your theory, then go get a Vrabel or a Belichick because you don't need a good OC because Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase
that
will
would
take care of the rest.
that would be a different argument. But the people that argue to fire Zac Taylor and go get a Ben Johnson or a Bobby Slowick, that drives me up a wall. Because what's the difference? Zac Taylor is calling an elite offense right now. The Bengals offense is elite. How much credit you want to give to Zac Taylor? I guess that we can debate that. But the Bengals offense is elite with Zac Taylor as the play caller right now.
If you're at, I'm not going to judge the play calling because I think it is all based off of can you as a player do your job efficiently?
Yes.
Right? It's all about that. But when it comes to scheme and coming up with the identity of the team, that's where I have a problem with Zac Taylor. And I think many people confuse the two together because they just look at the game and say, like, oh, that was a terrible play call. Well, part of it is because their identity is throwing the ball 85% of the time.
Right.
So, like, I think in that way, that's why I want a Ben Johnson because I think he's more
The
balanced.
overall scheme.
But, yeah.
And that's fair.
And I think that's where the conversation gets muddied.
That
right?
is 100%. If you're talking about an overall scheme, then that is absolutely fair.
And then then it also kind of points to like the whole team as a whole, like the identity of the team as a whole, which falls strictly on the leadership of the team, the head coach, offense coordinator, defense coordinator. For me, the problems all lie really on defense. I think
exactly where I'm at.
I think we put a lot of. Yeah, we're getting ready to go to a break here. So the last thing I'll say is a lot of the onus is on the structure of the roster
Yes.
and what they decided the identity of the team would be. And that's the biggest issue of the Bengals right now is that both of them are just really, really bad right now.
You give any coach these 22 players, they're not winning a ton of games.
Correct. That's what I'm getting at.